The Paranormal Network invites you to accompany us on a new journey where we'll take you inside some of the most compelling and mysterious close encounters ever recorded. We'll examine the evidence, we'll listen to the witnesses, and we'll consider every possibility. Join us as we investigate history's most infamous UFO incidents. Known as both the cowboy capital of the world and the city of champions, Stephenville, Texas is a small town made up of under 20,000 people, many of them dairy farmers, salt-of-the-earth folks, you might call them, who live simple lives and don't mind living about an hour south of the nearest big city, Fort Worth. If you go to the city's official website, you'll see notifications about bingo nights and flea markets, as well as a sentence describing the place as, quote, distinctly Texan. Independent, hardworking, and educated. Simply put, this is the very picture of small town living in the U.S., which of course makes it the perfect place for a startling paranormal event. Because for a few days during the winter of 2008, the eyes of the nation were fixed on Stephenville for reasons that had nothing to do with dairy or cowboys. It just so happens that the Texas city would become the center of the UFO universe for a little while after multiple people, those same hardworking, educated people the city's website boasts about, saw what they described as a UFO, or perhaps multiple UFOs. This would become known as the Stephenville event. Ricky Sorrells was a machinist at the time, a regular guy who liked to hunt. He was out hunting on the day it happened, January 8th, 2008. Walking through a stretch of cold woods, Ricky had his rifle with him as he sought out deer. Following a narrow path, he momentarily got tangled up in some shrubbery, causing him to slow down and be extra quiet lest he scare off his prey. Noticing something far above him, he looked up, and in that moment, Ricky's life changed forever. Approximately 300 feet above him was a large, flat, metallic object hovering directly above him. Ricky would later note it had no seams, nuts, or bolts, and the object had a hazy aura around it as if exhaust was coming out of it from somewhere. Ricky's mind raced as he pointed his rifle up and peered through the scope, trying to see where the object ended, but it was so large he couldn't see the end of it. After a moment of wondering, what in the world am I looking at? The object took off at a 45-degree angle, moving so fast Ricky thought if he had blinked, he would have missed its departure. Ricky later told friends he saw this mysterious flat metallic object in the sky, and maybe predictably, he was laughed at and didn't report the sighting. That is, until he saw that others were coming forward with their own accounts of seeing the unusual visitor to their small town. Ricky would later say in the newspaper, quote, "It's good to hear that other people saw something because that means I'm not crazy." Ricky would have to get in line because many other residents of Stephenville would end up thinking they were seeing things, or at the very least seeing something they could not make sense of. And Ricky's life was about to get a lot more interesting and distressing. But we'll return to him in a minute. A pilot named Steve Allen was clearing brush in the nearby town of Selden when he saw what looked like an enormous aircraft with strobing lights that was, quote, bigger than a Walmart. He'd estimate that it was a mile long and half a mile wide in size and made no sound as far as he could tell. Soon after, he said the thing flew away very quickly, and its exit was followed by 2 fighter jets that attempted to chase after the object, which was already gone in a flash. Steve would later say in an interview, quote, "It was positively, absolutely nothing from around these parts." Another county constable by the name of Leroy Gaitan went on record to say he saw red and white flashing lights moving fast above him, but he couldn't make out what the object itself was. He would later say, quote, "I didn't see a flying saucer and I don't know what it was, but it wasn't an airplane and I've never seen anything like it." He reckoned the object was about 3,000 feet in the air and would later say he assumed it was a secret military project or experiment. When the news broke in the Empire Tribune about 2 days after the event, more and more people started coming forward with tales of seeing the mysterious object in the sky. Soon enough, it would turn out at least that 200 people saw it, whatever it was. Naturally, the military would end up getting involved, though if the residents of Stephenville thought their questions would be answered, They were very wrong. Major Carl Lewis, a spokesman for the Air Force Base in Fort Worth, didn't have much to say about the incident initially. Predictably, the accounts of seeing the unidentified flying object were brushed off, with Lewis saying, quote, "I'm 90% sure this was an airliner. With the sun's angle, it can play tricks on you." They were also careful to note there were no F-16s or any other crafts from the base in the vicinity. It must have all been an illusion, albeit one seen by an increasing number of people. That said, people had seen F-16s in addition to the perplexing metallic craft. The aforementioned pilot Steve Allen was not the only one who saw jets going after this massive craft. A woman named Claudette Odom, along with her husband and friends, saw the object moving very fast in the overhead, fast as a rocket. Soon after, the deafening sound of two F-16s racing towards their target frightened the group, who watched in amazement as the jets and the UFO disappeared in the night sky. When Odom heard the military's explanation or lack thereof, she scoffed, going on the record to say, quote, "I don't know what they're trying to cover up. We saw what we saw. I knew there were fighter jets." About 2 weeks after their initial statement, the Air Force made a stunning reversal and said that indeed there had been fighter jets above Stephenville that night, about 10, in fact, performing training operations. Major Lewis attributed the about face to a simple error that they were correcting. Unsurprisingly, not a lot of people were buying it. Local pilots like Steve Allen knew their surrounding airspace well and said the area above Stephenville was not a part of where F-16s would be flying. A pilot named Don Downs stated Stephenville is 11 miles away from the military operating area, hence not a place fighter jets would be training. The Air Force stuck to its story, however, their honesty was certainly in question for many who knew what they saw that evening. The reporter who was most on top of the story was Angelina Joyner, who worked at the Stephenville Empire Tribune and got most of the juicy quotes from those who saw the event that January night. She claimed none of the people she interviewed could have mistaken the object they saw for F-16s, and the people who did see F-16s could easily tell they were not the same kind of craft that held everyone's attention. She says, quote, "It just makes it seem like something's going on. The military coming out with this at this point is just going to fuel the fire." Feeling the heat of the fire was Ricky Sorrells, the hunter who caught a good look at the thing overhead. Ricky had become briefly famous in the days following his sighting, as he gave an interview to the Associated Press as the rest of the country and world began picking up on the story. Ricky didn't want any fame, he just wanted to know what it was he saw. Something he claims he saw more than one time, incidentally. Trying to keep his head down, Ricky just wanted to go on with his life as usual, but something was keeping that from happening, and it was no UFO. It was, he believed, the military attempting to silence him. Nearly a month after his first encounter with the object, Ricky opened up to Angelina Joyner about the disturbing visits he was receiving from an unknown man with apparent connections to the Air Force, as well as nighttime visits from military aircrafts flying at low altitudes, presumably in an attempt to intimidate him. Sorrells said he received threatening phone calls from a man who said to him, quote, "Son, we have the same caliber weapons as you do, but a lot more of them." Ricky was also told the encroaching helicopters would stop appearing over his house at night when he stopped talking to the press about what he'd seen. One night, he saw a man in a field walking into the woods. When he went after him, he did not find the man, but he did find a shiny new bullet placed on the ground. Ricky said, quote, "The military was showing me that they could get to me if they wanted." Finally, a former acquaintance of Ricky's who once worked for the military told him to keep his mouth shut about the object, implying it was for his best interest. After that, Ricky and his acquaintance stopped speaking. Understandable. The story took off, of course, with even the likes of Larry King getting into the Stephenville groove. The small city, as most do when it comes to this kind of publicity, tried to make the best of it, selling t-shirts and marketing the phenomena to curiosity seekers. Soon the town would find themselves visited by specialists on the topic at a town hall meeting that would reveal just how many people actually experienced the Stephenville event. About 2 weeks after the event, 6 members from the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON, arrived in Stephenville to do some heavy research. In existence since 1969, MUFON prides itself on being the foremost UFO researching outfit in the world, with a membership of over 4,000 and over 100,000 cases investigated. Far from being a team of crackpots, MUFON was founded and has been overseen by a team of doctors, scientific engineers, and businessmen. The Stephenville event was the foremost UFO case on everybody's mind at the beginning of 2008, and the team of UFO experts organized a town hall meeting to speak with those who saw the object that night. Perhaps to their surprise, their little town hall meeting ended up being a bit bigger than they were anticipating, with hundreds of people showing up to detail what they saw. For about 3 hours, the MUFON people heard the accounts of everyday citizens who were most likely very happy to be amongst like-minded people, now unafraid to admit they saw something unexplainable in the sky that night. Not long after, the History Channel came calling as well, with UFO hunters doing a special on the event and similarly talking with people who are now ready to open up about their unforgettable encounter. A follow-up visit from the History Channel's paranormal series In Search Of revealed even more witnesses who were afraid to go to the town hall meeting. After a while, it would seem it'd be harder to track down people who didn't see anything strange on January 8th. In July of that same year, MUFON revealed that it had recovered radar data from that night using Freedom of Information Act requests to the FAA and National Weather Service. What they encountered was that UFOs separate from the known F-16 jets the same radar data confirmed were flying in the area that night were in the air over Stephenville that night, and, quote, the unknown radar targets, which did not have the required identification transponders, exhibited strange flight characteristics beyond that of known civilian or military aircraft. That would not end Stephenville's run-ins with UFOs. In fact, only a year later, the town was on the map again for even more sightings, once again by ordinary families and farmers who never thought much about the topic before it came hovering right over their heads. Ricky Sorrells continued to see them, and with so many people reporting them at that point, hopefully he stopped having to worry about strange men threatening him in the middle of the night. Ricky, for the record, never came out and said he thought these were visitors from another planet, as he told a Dallas newspaper in 2009, quote, all we want to know is, what is it? Safe to say, that's what most of us want to know.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.